Welcome, everyone, to GST Presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. It is with great pleasure today that I have an incredible guest. We're going to talk about psychological warfare at internet scale. So, we are sitting down with founders at GST, building at the edge of what's next. Today's conversation is about an invisible enemy, one that doesn't break into systems, but into people. Psychological warfare at internet scale. As AI gets better at mimicking humans' voice, tone, urgency, emotion, the battlefield has shifted. This is no longer just a cybersecurity problem, it's a persuasion problem. Our guest today is Boaz Valkin. He's a co-founder and CEO of Valkin, a company focused on stopping scams and social engineering before damage is done. Boaz has built consumer-centric products across multiple startups, lived and walked across continents, and now sits right at the intersection of AI, psychology, and digital safety. We're going to talk today about how scams are evolving with AI, why humans, not systems, are the real attack surface, and what it takes to defend people in an era of synthetic persuasion. I think we've all been down through there. We can't tell what's real and what's fake anymore. With that, I'd like to bring Boaz on board. Hi, Boaz.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
So you said you've walked across a lot of continents. Where have you walked across? How many different continents you've been on?
So I'm South African originally, lived in South Africa, lived in Argentina, lived in the UK where I am now and have been for the last 10 years, and also lived in the UAE for a bit.
And so how was it in Argentina? Did you like it there?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Real highlight. I spent a year after my undergrad backpacking through South America and then working a bit in Argentina.
Was it safe?
Yeah, well, I'm from South Africa, so most things are safe compared
Yeah. How is South Africa, by the way? I hear a lot. I've been I was in Africa a few weeks ago. I was in Nigeria.
Nigeria, in Lagos?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Lagos too. South Africa is an amazing country, very, very complicated, very unique, interesting history. Like a lot of complicated places, the violence and safety depends on sort of where you are, particularly in urban environments. What is a little bit more unique to South Africa, unfortunately, is the violent crime. So like, for example, in London, which is the phone theft capital of Europe, people aren't going to kill you for your phone, whereas in South Africa, you can get killed for your possessions. So that's a particular type.
Kill you for a phone?
It's possible, yeah.
And then in the UK, what do people just steal it? They come up and what do they pull a knife on it, or what do they do?
No, you can see a lot of videos on YouTube. There's what's called these phone theft gangs. They're on these electric bikes and they go through the busiest streets in London, central London, outside the pubs. People are walking, often a little bit tipsy. Everyone is multitasking, head down on their phone, and they just snatch it out of your hand. It's actually happened to a family member of mine twice in the last 12 months.
Really? That's unbelievable. But you're saying in South Africa, they would kill you for it.
I mean, yes. I mean, the violent crime is absolutely horrific, with one of the highest murder rates, in the world. Comparable with some American cities and cities across Central America and Brazil. South Africa tops the rankings for, I think it's in the top 5 globally in certain cities. That being said, because it's going to be quite a dark episode with a lot of dark topics, South Africa is a beautiful place and you should 100% go visit. The food is amazing. It's very beautiful, very friendly people.
Just hide your phone.
Just be a little bit cautious and you'll be okay.
Okay, no, that's great. Thanks for those insights. It's appreciated. So when you hear the phrase AI-powered scams, what do most people still misunderstand about the threat, and how pervasive, and actually persuasive too, is the threat?
Yeah. So I personally, and a lot of people who work at Falkin, my company, we believe that this is one of the top threats facing society today. we're only just getting started, and it's unfortunately hitting people across multiple different entry points. So scams have existed since the dawn of time. People have always tried to impersonate other people, and that's the key thing. Every scam has an element of impersonation, right? Whether it's impersonating your bank, a family member, government member, whatever it is. When we think about AI-powered scams, I think what people think about is maybe like deep fakes that they hear about on the media, like someone was pretending to be Elon Musk for a cryptocurrency scam, or it's an AI voice element to it or video element. But actually, the most common types are really just AI infused scams, really increasing the production value of scams, meaning 20 years ago, there was the famous like Nigerian prince email that had terrible grammar and it was so obviously poorly written. But now with perfect English, people are using generative AI on the content side. But the scarier bit is a huge rise in phishing kits as a service, where for $75 or so, someone can buy a pre-built template or use a low-code AI generator to build a perfect replica of Gary's bank's login page and put a phishing link to a service that looks exactly like your banking page,
Wow.
which 10 years ago would be incredibly hard to pull off. Now you can do it in a matter of minutes, all powered by AI, because you can now use AI for each element of that stack to conduct those scams. And the scammers have been inspired by like how SaaS companies are structured for like a full end-to-end service. And the scammers leverage those same models. And that's one of the most common ones that we see.
You describe this as a persuasion battlefield, not a cyber one. Why is that distinction so important today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's say traditionally, when people think about they hear about like data breaches, infrastructure problems, my device being hacked. There's the human psychology side of cyber, where it's really focused on human vulnerabilities, okay, where someone has like knowingly engaged with a scam or a criminal group because they've been persuaded to do so. And that's what we refer to as like the battlefield, where these criminal groups are leveraging different manipulation techniques, typically urgency, to get someone to do something under a hot state of stress. So for example, Gary, your account has been compromised, or your hotel accommodation will be cancelled unless you fix this right now. Or at the worst extremes, your child's been in an accident at school. Can you call this number, etc.? All of these different types. That's really about persuasion to create this era, this veil of legitimacy that you're now not kind of thinking straight, so to speak.
What was the moment that made you realize scams were becoming a fundamentally different problem, not just more fraud, but something new?
So I think one thing, I was working at a fintech company doing payments across Africa. ChatGPT had just been released, sort of playing around with these tools, seeing how like sophisticated it was, and immediately jumping to like fraud use cases. I was actually also in Lagos and South Africa for this previous job, seeing how it started to emerge in sort of these hotbeds of scams. And then the topic was very close to my heart. My mother, who's 72, lost nearly her entire life savings to a scam. And I'm very
What kind of scam, Boaz? What did they do?
It's a bank impersonation scam. So across a few different areas. So like a text message scam saying, hi, Mrs. Valkin, your account has been compromised. Click on this link, call this number, pretending to be the fraud.
What happens when you click on the link?
Takes you to a perfect page of your bank's website with a slight change in the URL, asking you to confirm your details, and then the scammers basically got into her account, pretending to be her, and liquidated her accounts in a matter of hours.
Who's doing it though, Boaz? What kind of group? Who are they organized? Is it countries are doing it, or where's it coming from?
So it depends on the type of scam. So there's different it's a bit macabre to say, but like innovation sides of the world that specialize in certain types of scams. So in West Africa, it's more prominent around romance scams to the United States. Southeast Asia has a few other elements. There are ties to malicious.
Tell me a little bit about the romance scam. What happens?
So you'll typically have young men from countries like Ghana, Nigeria, etc. They all speak English, low employment opportunities where they live. They will create fake accounts and be basically living in a scam compound. They'll create fake accounts on Match.com, other portals, particularly targeting lonely people over the age of 50, 60, etc. And they will prey upon those people for weeks and weeks, build a whole story, also being helped with the use of AI to write better messages, kind of content ideas. And those are some of the hardest scams because it's not inherent in a single urgent moment. They're preyed upon for months and months to like give funds, pay for my ticket to America, pay for my brother's tuition. And you've heard horror stories of people losing their entire life savings and pension over, 3 to 6 months.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I know a couple of people that have had that happen to them. Two people, actually. One of them was contacted on LinkedIn and made the person made it seem like they're a real estate person just like them. The guy worked her over a few months and then started talking about a great investment opportunity. Hey, listen, I'm working in this, I'm working in that. And it was just a big scam. Just a big scam. The whole thing was a scam, and it took months. And then she spoke to the guy, right? And the guy spoke perfect English.
Yeah.
It wasn't like maybe they were from device to make it sound like it's perfect English, but worked. And I know another guy that had it happen with women. He met some girls online, and I can't wait to be with you. You're so great. You're my soulmate, you're all this stuff over months.
Exactly. So you see romance scams and investment scams disproportionately affect older people. Phishing links and actually job scams are affecting younger people more than their parents and grandparents. So it's a total end-to-end problem, but you see different demographics affected disproportionately depending on the type of scam.
No, it's amazing. So how exactly is AI amplifying social engineering today? And what's happening now that simply wasn't possible 5 years ago?
Yeah. So it really is the cost, the scale, and the production value. So people can now use AI to scrape social media and platforms like LinkedIn and others to build like lists of targets. Okay. There's also coupled with a few other elements. So because there's vulnerabilities at a number of different large organizations, all it takes is someone to be compromised at that organization. Let's say a low-paid CX agent at a large institution. And you hear stories about those people are compromised. They'll pay them in crypto and speak to them on Telegram. And all they need to do is leak some information like addresses and emails of every account holder who has more than $100,000 at that institution. So then they start piecing together that information with what they find publicly and privately, and then they can do more sophisticated attacks, okay, with those individuals. So it sort of cross-references a few different angles, or you have these general purpose mass scams, so pretending to be your telco, Netflix, your bank.
Where are those, Boaz, those exact that you just talked about, there's more complex. What countries are they coming from?
All over. It's totally international. You do see ties. I don't know, you're familiar with Easy Pass, right? The toll road on the East Coast. That was very widely published a few weeks ago, an article in the Wall Street Journal. The fake Easy Pass smishing, so a phishing link in an SMS pretending to be Easy Pass every Monday, that stole $1 billion from US consumers last year. For reference, that's nearly equal to the entire fraud losses in the whole of the UK.
Who's running that? Where's that from?
That's linked to malicious state actors in China.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, are we seeing scams move from volume-based attacks to precision-targeted persuasion?
You see both. So mass scams on the rise, precise scams and highly sophisticated ones on the rise. At like the most sophisticated would be, cloning someone's voice and then infiltrating an organization, pretending to be employees or the finance team, saying, I've got this urgent M&A deal. It's going to be you, me, and this new lawyer in the Cayman Islands. And if you disclose it, you're going to be put on an SEC watch list and all of these other things. Those are highly, highly sophisticated, and you need to get everything right at the right time. Let's just pretend to be Verizon this week.
Wow. And what role do voice cloning, deepfakes, and emotional manipulation play in the next wave of scams?
So everything. So imagine that each of those components becomes like SaaS products that the scammers can use to orchestrate, and then they exploit low trust infrastructure or infrastructure that's not properly monitored. So unfortunately, on the big tech platforms like Meta and Facebook, there are a lot of scams originating. There's lots of public reports about the exact percentages. So that's another murky area where a lot of those platforms don't want to moderate content because of regulatory pressure, government pressure, which again, consumers end up getting smashed because of that. So scammers will use all of the tools that you described. They could just use voice to do a blast with AI to call 100,000 people in a hyper-localized scam in Colorado. They could tie voice with video to email. So it's just different components that's now in the scammer tech stack.
Is there a point where scams become indistinguishable from legitimate human communication?
So there are certain things that are relatively immutable, okay, but it's quite hard for a human to kind of track that constantly. So what do I mean by that? So for example, google.com as like an apex domain is virtually impossible to like spoof. But to replace one O with a 0 and then a perfect replica of a Google login page, that's like the next thing. So what ends up happening, it's a volume game where it's in certain areas it will be indistinguishable. You will not be able to tell the difference between this login page from another, and you have to look out for these cues, but it is unrealistic to expect humans, who are always mobile first, doing a million things, to be able to process so much information 7 days a week whenever they're online. So what we believe is that people will need greater protection that's kind of, supporting them in the background, that can basically alert them and say, hey, that's not real. That's low trust. You shouldn't engage there. Almost like your video alarm bell system at the front door. Nothing is perfect, but increasingly with the Ring system, you want to know who's at your front door, right? Before you let them know.
I had a situation with one of those occur, both of us. So at one of the condos that I have, one of the neighbors had a Ring and I had a Ring, and somebody actually came up and stole an Apple monitor that I had, and I tied in the gate, the front of the place, with where they put their driver's license in, caught her face, then caught her in the Ring's camera, called the police, and within hours I had my monitor back. She got arrested. And so the sophistication of the tools to catch when you start tying them together is quite interesting. I love what you're doing. What does AI defending humans actually look like in practice? And where does the AI sit in the decision loop?
Yeah. So I think there's this interesting intersection of data privacy and security, because the more data you have, especially with AI, the more context you have, the greater the accuracy and the lower the false positives and lower the false negatives. So there's a balance around how do you keep people secure and comforted. People don't like Big Brother-esque surveillance type systems, especially people have been burnt in the past. So you have to kind of strike a tight balance there. What we believe around our approach and our view on this thing is creating simple but powerful tools that people trust, that they can check at urgent moments. That can be an urgent message, an urgent call that they receive, an email, a payment request. That's some of the tooling that we've built, and there's a few others as well. And then the thing that really gets us excited out of bed is more of the other stuff that I was describing, which is this background monitoring, private, anonymous to an extent, depending on what's happening. And then you've got real comfort that this is going to protect you before you engage in an urgent click or an urgent message. That's what I think will be needed and commonplace by the end of the decade, particularly for more vulnerable members of society.
So how do you stop manipulation without training people to distrust everything and everyone?
So funnily enough, I think one of the most low-tech solutions is actually to breathe and pause. Okay, it's actually remarkable that most things in life are actually not truly urgent. Like a company will follow up for a payment the next day and probably another week, whatever it is. In most cases, it's not truly urgent. So just pausing and then always double checking with another human that you trust is actually a pretty good measure before you follow the full end to end. That's a low tech thing to do that is quite hard to remember in the moment, but is one practical thing. And then the other element will be to rely on technology to support you in your decision making.
Do you think digital literacy alone, Boaz, is enough, or do we really need AI co-pilots for trust? I've written a lot about some of the things that we built are co-pilots are like your grandmother, love you and care about you with empathy and compassion, right? Do we need basically bodyguards to watch over us, all the guardian angels to watch over us all the time for everything?
I think there's full variations, and it should be plug and play depending on what you're comfortable with. And so, for example, maybe someone wants better support with email. Okay, who's sending the email? Is it safe? Some people might want that for unknown text messages and phone numbers and phone calls, or clicking on URLs. And I think that there will be a bodyguard, digital bodyguard type system, that might be folded into AI assistance at some point, or dedicated service because it's so specialized. Yes, personally, if anything, it's kind of a contrarian take. I think the literacy piece is making the problem worse because it's leading to overconfidence in the ability to spot the scam or the deception or the persuasion in real time.
So let's look ahead 24 months. What scam techniques will sound shocking today but feel normal then?
I think that, at that point, I think you're just going to see more of them across multiple channels with all of the components intersecting at once. So someone's, a big company's account has been compromised on Instagram. They've announced the launch of this new show or crypto platform. They've got actors who have been deepfaked, and then all of the technologies are intersecting, like sign up here, send us some crypto, you're on the wait list, etc., etc. And then by the time it's properly covered, even if it's a matter of hours, people accounts have been compromised. And I think particularly in certain elements of the US, because it's what was quite shocking to me living in the UK is that there's no federal reporting of financial crime. There's not a federal database of this. It's very state focused. So, across state boundaries, across the US, I think widespread impersonation of government agencies, community banks, regional banks, schools, hospitals, because it will come so cheap. I think every element will end up being a target for these sorts of scams.
Who do you think's most vulnerable in this next phase? The consumers, the institutions, or the enterprises?
mostly the consumers, and then I do think then it's the enterprises, particularly financial institutions, because in some ways you kind of feel sorry for them because they end up being the gatekeepers right at the end, even if the stuff originates not on their platform, and in some cases doesn't have to do with them. Like if someone's fallen for a Netflix scam, you don't really call Netflix, you call the bank when you've lost some money. So the pain is there. And then I think the pain is with the government and society. Like if you take my mother's example, right? And the bank said to her she'd been a banking customer for 35 years, hardworking teacher, is now a pensioner. If my mother lost all of her funds, all of her life savings at 72, because the bank said, listen, you were negligent, you shouldn't have engaged with this. Now it's a burden on the state. Like here you have a 72-year-old, maybe lives another 15, 20 years. Like who's going to look after those people?
No, it's a problem for everything, and it's unfair. There's a lot of, the things that the people that I know that have gotten scammed, they're smart. One has a PhD, a smart guy, right? The other one, MBAs, all this. It's just, it's not like you think. It's not just people that are weak. It's people that are, they're coming at them hard, right? They're psychologically coming at them. And it's amazing. It's great that companies like yours exist. So if you could redesign one thing about the internet to reduce manipulation, what would it be, Boaz?
Oh, that's a good question. So do you know when you visit a website, you see that padlock on a website linked to HTTPS?
Mm-hmm.
We're taught that the padlock is a sign of trust, right? All that padlock says is that a company somewhere applied for a certificate and that site is encrypted. It doesn't actually say that the site is safe, okay? And people reuse that type of information across multiple sites. So I think that's like one common place, that if you're rebuilding the internet, how can there be an independent trust layer that properly says, this is Gary's website, it's tied to his company, and it's only valid for that site, okay? That would be a significant improvement, and there should be additional independent trust measures. But I think when it comes to consumers and liability and trust and safety, it becomes a mess.
Final question, Boaz. What gives you hope that we can actually win this persuasion arms race?
So I think there's a lot of mission-driven people like myself trying to make a difference. There is a lot of cross-sector collaboration. I think the topic is getting more and more coverage in the news. So I think all of those will be promising. I think that's really what's needed, is cross-sector collaboration. And then a change in the narrative, like even with some of your comments around, there's still this conception of I was dumb to fall for this scam, right? Like I was stupid. And there's this like self-shame, blame game mentality, where the reality is it has almost nothing to do with your intelligence. Everyone is affected. There's no stigma to fall for it. And actually more people talking about digital safety is how we get to the next level. Unfortunately, there will always be crime. There's never going to be a perfect utopia, but we can definitely elevate our safety measures, and we can only do that if it's a joint effort across all of the different sectors.
That sounds great. If you want to stay on after the show for a few minutes, we can talk. Closing thoughts, Boaz, and how do people get hold of you?
LinkedIn, can find me at Boaz Valkin. Send me a DM if you're interested in the space around what we're doing. And hopefully it is quite a terrifying topic. But there are a couple of basic principles to help. And I really appreciate you having me on the show and talking about this important topic.
Yeah, no, thanks, Boaz, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And thanks to all of you for joining one more time. GSD Presents, Get You Done Venture Studios, and Family Office presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy, and have a great weekend. I'll be back again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Boaz, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you.